Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show that brings you the right guests, ask the relevant questions on things that matter to you. We have a very special show for you today because today is Eid AlAdha, is the Feast of Sacrifice. And we're going to speak to the Minister for Inner Cities and Zongo Development, not just about today's significance, but also about his portfolio and what he's been doing since he was sworn in. Stay with us. Welcome back to, we call it the Barka da Sallah edition of The Point of View because, well, it's Salah Day and we're happy to wish all of you a happy Eid AlAdha. In fact, if you want to wish your colleagues and friends and family any wishes, there's a WhatsApp number on the screen. Just send your messages through and we'll be very happy to spread them throughout the show. So my guest started out as a student leader and he did some very interesting work within the SRCs of UCC and NUCs. Later on became the personal aide of the then opposition candidate, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. When he won elections in 2016, he became the Minister for Information. These days, he's the Minister for the newly created Ministry of Inner Cities and Zongo Development. He's also a religious cleric, a scholar of religion actually, who can double equally in the Quran and the Holy Bible. Mustapha Abdul-Hamid is my guest. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, my brother.
Barka da Sallah.
To be here. Barka Kadi.
What does that mean? What does the response mean?
Barka means grace. So graceful Salah, basically.
Graceful Salah.
Yes, or Baraka in another sense could also mean blessing. So blessed Ramadan, either blessed Ramadan or blessed Salah or.
And the response Barka Kadi, what does that mean?
Like blessing
to you.
Exactly.
Blessing to you.
Yeah.
But this is Eid AlAdha.
Yes.
The feast of sacrifice.
Yes, please.
Different from Eid al-Fitr.
Yes, please.
What's the difference?
Eid AlAdha, as you said, is the Eid of sacrifice. And, you know, for those of us who are religious scholars, we shy away from talking about contentious issues.
Okay.
Because we assume that every religious viewpoint is valid. Okay. And so what I'm going to say is not a theological defense of the matter. I'm just telling you
it's a good disclaimer.
What Muslims believe.
Okay.
You know, Muslims believe that when God says, as captured in the Bible, that you should sacrifice, that Prophet Abraham, whom the Muslims call Ibrahim, should sacrifice his only son, that son is Ishmael. That's why I said I'm not going into an argument about whether it was Ishmael or Isaac, but the Muslims believe that it was Ishmael. Because only son, Ishmael certainly was the firstborn. And so Muslims believe that if he says only son, at that point there was no Isaac. You know, if there was Isaac, it would have been your son. But only couldn't have been Isaac, according to Muslim belief. So the whole Eid al-Adha feast of sacrifice is, if you want, a mimicry of the attempted sacrifice of Prophet Ibrahim's son Ishmael. I mean, ultimately, as both the Bible and the Quran acknowledge, the sacrifice of the child was substituted for a ram.
A ram, whose horns was locked in a ticket.
A bibisa, as they say.
Yeah.
So the Muslims do this Eid of sacrifice to commemorate that event and to thank God for also a successful Hajj.
So it seems that Eid al-Adha coincides with Hajj. Eid al-Fitr ends Ramadan.
Ramadan, yes, please.
So what about Eid al-Fitr then? What's the significance of that?
Eid al-Fitr is just a festival of thanksgiving to Almighty Allah for guiding Muslims through a whole month of fasting and prayer. You know, so 30 days of extreme sacrifice, extreme hunger, thirst, etc., has come to an end. So the relief that you feel after this 1 month of draining spiritual exercise, you organize a feast on that day, and then you celebrate and you thank God for taking you through that period.
Which is bigger?
In our local parlance, we call the Eid al-Adha Salah Baba, which means the bigger Salah. So this Eid one is the bigger.
It's the bigger one. Yes. Is this the one that they share meat for people, or is the first?
Yes, it's because this is the one that animals are sacrificed around. What do we call them? Even goats and cows and etc. are slaughtered. So it is the one in which there's plentiful meat, you know, and basically a lot of meat. So that's why they call it Salah Baba.
Interesting. So on a day like this, we have a collective Muslim prayer. Usually there's a meeting. Why is that important? Why do they usually meet at Independence Square or a specific place and usually have one joint prayer?
Yeah, you know, it's a celebration of thanksgiving. And in every spirituality, when I say spiritual, I mean religious tradition. In every religious tradition, communal prayer is an integral part of spirituality. And so it is only natural, it is in tune with spirituality that if we are celebrating a festival, okay, we come together to do it in a ritual manner. Just like all the rituals associated with Easter, Christianity, and etc. would end or culminate in church services.
So the coming together
so
is important.
Yes, it's part of it, because religion is communal, and especially so for Islam, because that's why Muslims call themselves an ummah. Ummah means a brotherhood or a community, or even some people would translate it as nation.
Okay. Is that different from the Muslim faithful? Or that's different?
Yes, the faithful are the individual people, but the
together,
collective,
I see.
Yes, together we have the Muslim Ummah. So when I say the Muslim Ummah, I mean Muslims all over the world. So it is an Ummah, and Muslims see themselves as a community, as a nation. Okay, and so everything that Muslims do, more or less, must culminate in a gathering of the Ummah.
I see. Since you're a scholar, I'm appealing just to your scholastic point of view, knowing that these are contentious. When we follow global geopolitics, we are told that there's the Sunni and then there's the Shia, and it appears to be quite a deep fault. What's the difference between the two?
Shia is a short form of the terminology Shiat Ali, which means partisans of Ali, or if you want, partisan supporters of Ali. And Ali was the cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet of Islam.
Okay.
Ali grew up in his household. Okay. And it's reported by the Islamic scriptures to be the first male to accept Islam. Okay. He's also reputed, according to Islamic scripture, to be the most learned after the Prophet himself, the one who was well versed in the tenets of the religion. And so after the death of the Prophet, there was contention as to who should be the successor to the Prophet. In other words, who should lead the Muslim Ummah after the Prophet's death. Okay, and then there was a selection of one Abu Bakr, who was the Prophet's friend.
Okay.
To become the first successor to the Prophet of Islam. They call him Caliph.
The Caliph.
Abu Bakr became the first Caliph. But there were people in the community who dissented and said that, in our opinion, Ali should have been the first successor.
Being the first convert and a close friend.
The first convert and a close friend and the most learned of the Islamic scripture. Naturally, in their view, he should have been. So they broke themselves sort of away. They refrained from swearing allegiance to Abu Bakr. Okay. So there were initially 4 key members of the Muslim community at that time, companions of the Prophet, who were, if you want, the pillars of that dissension. They called them the 4 pillars, Arkan al-Arba. And they started, if you want, the basis for the development of Shiism.
Interesting.
You know, but scholars call that period proto-Shiism because it was not a full-blown, you know, if you want, separation
at the time
of the Ummah at that time. These were basically Salman al-Faris. There was Migdad, there was Ammar bin Yasser, and one other, which I will remember. Okay, so these people. Then, as the history went on, after Abu Bakr died, then he appointed his friend Omar to be the leader. Again, they raised noises and said, why are we leaving out Ali? Then when Omar died, was about to die, he formed what was called the Shura Council, a committee of 7 people. And he said, okay, the 7 of you meet when I'm not there and choose one of you to be Caliph. and that committee met and chose Osman as caliph. Are you following me? And then ultimately Ali became the 4th caliph. But the supporters of Ali continue to maintain, who are the Shias today, continue to count Ali as their first imam. So instead of using the word caliph, they use imam. And they say Imam Ali is the first, followed by his son Hassan, followed by Hussein, and so on, because they believe in the divinity of the family of the Prophet.
Wow.
So anybody who is not a bloodline of the Prophet means, in their view, does not have the qualification to lead the Muslim Ummah. So basically, it's a question.
So the Sunni believe in the blood inheritance, and
that's the Shia.
The Shia.
Yes.
He has to be related by blood.
Exactly.
And the Sunni the other way.
Actually, through Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet, because Ali was married to Fatima.
Interesting. I see. But is, apart from that genesis of difference,
yes,
in terms of belief in the Quran, the Hadith, and all those things, is there a difference?
No, all of it.
Is the same.
Everything else is the same. Except that, of course, just like all other religious divisions, as the history rolled on, they began to form theological, if you want, let me say, for want of a better term, theological imperatives, or if you want, theological signposts to distinguish
themselves
their
from
practices
the other group. Yes.
From. But even that, they all claim that these were the authentic practices of the Prophet. So, for example, we have 5 daily prayers. Okay, Shias recognize that there are 5 daily prayers. Sunnis recognize that there are 5 daily prayers. But the Shias say these 5 daily prayers in 3 periods.
Okay.
In a day. So we have Fajr, Zohar, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. The Sunnis will say them like that, separately. So 5 a.m., 12:30, 3 p.m., maybe 6 p.m., and then 7 p.m. But the Shias say that prayers are set in periods, not in specific times. Okay, so the entire period when the sun is at its zenith, that is from 12 noon all the way to 5 p.m., according to Shia theology, is time for the Zuhr and Asr prayer. Wow. And it is left to you to fix these 2 prayers in the way that you deem fit.
Interesting.
Are you following me? So you necessarily don't have to. So, for example, I work with CTFM. My break period is 12:30 to 1:30 strictly. 12:30 to 1:30, according to Shia belief, when I go on break, I can say my Zohar and Asr prayers and come back.
You've cleared the 2.
You clear the 2. So when you come and you are working, you are working. I don't have to come back to work and 3:30 again, I'm asking my supervisor for permission to go and pray again.
Wow.
That's
an interesting difference.
And then also in their call to prayer, the Shias acknowledge that Ali is, if you want, they say, Ashhadu anna Ali walillah. We acknowledge that Ali was a friend or is a friend of Allah. In other words, he's not an enemy of Allah. Because what happened was that there was a famous battle called the Battle of Siffin. Okay, in this Battle of Siffin, which took place maybe around 654 AD thereabouts, or 656 thereabouts, it was between, the 3rd caliph. Let me explain this important point. The 3rd caliph, Osman, was murdered. Okay, before Ali took over, and his supporters, Osman was accused of nepotism. So this nepotism and chronism that we talk about today is an ancient matter. Okay. So they accused him that he had appointed only his kinsmen, who were the Umayyads, to all the governorships positions of the Muslim empire. So his relative was governor in Egypt, in Syria, in Iraq, in Basra, in Kufa, all of the Muslim world. The famous one was Muawiyah, who was the governor of Syria. So when Osman died, Muawiyah coveted the caliphate. So he accused Ali of masterminding or being behind the death of Osman.
I see.
And that resulted in a battle between the forces of Muawiyah and the forces of Ali, which was called the Battle of Siffin.
Wow.
I follow.
So, but you're saying that in the prayer they acknowledge that Ali is a friend. Yes.
Yes.
How did they get there?
After that, that's the point I'm making. So after the Battle of Siffin, there was sharp enmity between these two groups, between the supporters of Ali and the supporters of Muawiyah. Eventually, Muawiyah was triumphant because after the death of Ali, he became caliph. And then he decreed that throughout the Muslim empire, anytime they are calling the azan or saying the ikama, they should curse Ali.
Wow.
And on at every Friday prayer, Ali was cursed as an enemy of, it was a precondition for being an imam in the entire Muslim world at the time.
Wow.
And the Umayyads ruled the Muslim world for almost 80 years running. So after the overthrow of the Umayyad dynasty, when the Shias got their freedom, they thought that if for 80 years Ali was cursed, we need to say things to repudiate that.
Wow.
And educate the contemporary people that Ali was not an enemy of God as the Umayyad had made him, but rather he's a friend of God. So they inserted it
that in
their call to prayer. And they say, Ashhadu anna Ali waliullah. We bear witness that Ali was a friend of Allah.
Incredible. So now let's just move it to geopolitics. So
yes.
Again, we notice that the Sunni superpower is Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
And the Shia superpower is Iran. How does that work when it comes to things like Mecca? Because our people are going to Hajj. They will go to Mecca in Saudi Arabia. Does that not affect? So will an Iranian Shia Muslim go to Mecca as well?
Of course. They do. And as you know, they are very vociferous and very assertive, and year in, year out at the Hajj conferences, they set conditions for the House of Saud and so on.
So despite the geopolitical enmity, when they have to go for Hajj, there's an arrangement that...
Oh, yes. In fact, they have the huge numbers, the bigger numbers of pilgrims. Yeah, so that one is not a problem at all. It is only the Ahmadis that a majority of the people of the Sunni world label as non-Muslim, and therefore actually the House of Saud physically prevents you from attending the Hajj if you state explicitly that you are Ahmadi.
Interesting.
But as for Shias, there's acknowledgement that they are Muslim, just that we have political differences. And therefore, we are at loggerheads. Because what happened was that Ali, from the Prophet all the way to Osman, the headquarters of the Muslim empire was Medina. But when Ali became caliph, he moved it from Medina to Kufa. Kufa is in modern-day Iraq.
Okay.
So that's why Iran-Iraq area, the majority are Shias.
So understanding those histories will help us understand the geopolitics of Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and all these
exactly.
places.
Bahrain, all of that Arab Mediterranean world is seriously divided on the basis of this question. But I remember when I was teaching at the University of Cape Coast, it was my favorite question, and that I will repeat every year. I would say that the differences between Shia and Sunni is political than it is theological.
Discuss.
Yes. I say adduce 4 reasons. Do you agree or disagree? Adduce 4 or 5 reasons for your answer. Because it is my considered opinion that the differences are
more political.
They arose out of who qualifies to lead the Muslim state. It had nothing to do with the religion as the theology of it.
But as with most religions, a lot of the followers may not even know. The leaders know, a lot of the adherents may not even know that they are the same.
Absolutely.
And therefore, it manifests itself in all kinds of... So, and that brings to the question, how do we make the practice of religion in a secular state work? Because a lot of people feel that we are in a secular state. Yep. So that even though we are free to practice our religions, we must sort of keep religion out of the state.
Absolutely.
But we also agree that as Africans, we are very religious, whether Christian, Muslim, or traditional worshippers. What's your view about how to be true to a religion and still be true to a secular constitution? Yeah,
there are 2 strands of secularism. There is secularism that says that we keep religion completely out of our politics, okay? Which means that we don't pray at state functions, pour libation at state functions, etc., etc. Religion is completely left to the individual's own practice and so on and so forth. Religion is deemed a private matter. That's one strand of secularism. Another strand of secularism says that you allow people, or you organize the state structure in such a way that it legitimizes every individual person's belief and factors it into nation cohesion. Okay, which is the second strand, is what our constitution chooses when it says in Article 21C, I think, Article 21 Clause C, that every Ghanaian, okay, I'm not quoting verbatim, paraphrasing. Yeah. It says that every Ghanaian shall have the right to profess a religion of their choice and to manifest such belief, unquote. Are you following me? So once I have a right to manifest my belief, if there's a function or everything, I'm free to come and pray, I'm free to wear my hood, etc., etc. So that's the kind of secularism that we have chosen.
So not just believe, but the manifestation
of sin. But the manifestation
of sin. Which, in your view, justifies praying at national events.
Exactly.
Interesting. We'll take a short break. This is the point of view. It's a special edition. We call it the Barka da Sallah edition. Today is Eid AlAdha. If you're watching on a Tuesday, it means it's the day after. And we have nobody else than Dr Mustapha Abdul-Hamid, who's a scholar of the study of religions and also the Minister for Inner Cities and Zongo Development. I hope you are learning something. If you have a question or a comment, just put it on the WhatsApp that we've put on the screen. When we come back, we'll delve more into the issue of secularism and also how his ministry has been doing in the past few months that he's been there. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is still the point of view, and we are doing a special Salah edition, Eid AlAdha, and we call it the Barka da Sallah edition. Incidentally, I am the one dressed like I went to pray. I don't know where he went. Mustapha Abdul-Hamid is our guest. Great education about some parts of Islamic history, the difference in the celebrations. So still in the spirit of secularism question, you're saying the Constitution is saying you can not just have the right to your faith, but manifest it.
Yes.
People have problems with two things that Ghana does. So we traditionally either sponsor or support pilgrims to Hajj. And people feel the state has no responsibility doing that. How do you address that?
Well, like I said, it is an arrangement that we have made as a nation. It's a choice that we have made between the two strands of secularism. Okay, so if we had chosen the first strand of secularism, that says that let the state have nothing at all to do with religion. Let's keep religion out completely of our state arrangements. Then this argument would have been justified. But we have chosen the second strand that recognizes the right of people to enjoy. And then we have put it in the Constitution, which will mean that if your religious right is being trampled upon, you can go to our law courts to seek redress for the matter and to restore your rights and etc., etc., etc. Okay? So because we have made this arrangement that allows us to factor religion into state arrangements, if a group of Muslims, by the way, many people still do not understand that this pilgrimage to Mecca is paid for by the Muslims.
By the pilgrim themselves?
Yes, the state doesn't
pay. It's not paid for by the state?
No. The state doesn't pay for Muslims. You know, however, because of exchange rates, I don't know, because I don't have an economic term to describe that. Because of exchange rate disparities, if you want, and the volatilities of the exchange rate, precisely. Because of the volatilities of the exchange rate, you know, people begin paying for the Hajj. People contribute actually to go to the Hajj. So people start 1 year, 2 years ahead of time paying money to the Hajj agents, so that by the time the Hajj comes, they have the full complement of the money. Sometimes by the time the Hajj is due, when it is due for the Hajj Board to collect these monies from the agents, the exchange rate has distorted
the amount collected.
I see. So at that point, all governments from 1992 to now will step in and say, don't worry, we will absorb
the difference
and pay to the Hajj. So this is what happens.
What about the Hajj village, the camping of the people? Doesn't the state pay for that?
No, the state doesn't pay for that. All of that is done by the Hajj Board. You know, in the money that the Hajj Board fixes, okay, in the fares that the Hajj Board fixes, there's some small margin that they use for these organizations, their travels to Saudi for the Hajj conferences, looking for accommodation in those places. So all of those, that is paid from the pilgrims' money.
So is it government-to-government communication? For example, if our citizens are going to Saudi Arabia,
exactly,
does the Saudi government require our government to do certain things.
Exactly, but that's the second important reason why you cannot take governments out of the Hajj. Okay, even if we had chose the first strand of secularism that says that governments have nothing to do with religion and religious people, in the case of the Hajj, we would still have been compelled to step in because the Saudi government recognizes only a government-to-government relationship. So you can't have a Bernard Avle Hajj company, Mustapha Hamid Hajj company, and then we all take pilgrims and try to deal with the Saudi government
on our own.
It won't happen. They won't take it because when people come there, they deal with them according to nations. Thailand, Malaysia, this, that, because of the accidents. It's a very huge gathering, perhaps about 5 million people gathering in one place in a year. So it is, if you want, what shall I say? It engenders accidents naturally.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when these things happen, the Saudi government ought to deal with the nations of the people who have been affected by whatever disaster has occurred.
Why has the Hajj been so chaotic in the past? In fact, in my journalistic work, I've covered some of the attempts to go to Hajj, and I've seen stranded pilgrims. In fact, some people have even gone to chastise some political parties for disrespecting Muslims by making the Hajj so chaotic. What is it that makes it so complicated? Or what has made it so complicated in the past? It doesn't appear so now.
Yeah, what happened was that, getting at the time of Hajj, all the countries of the world are in competition to get good planes. Okay, top airline companies to ferry
these are chartered flights,
etc. And so sometimes there's a lot of pressure on the planes. And in most times, you make arrangements with, say, Egypt Air, and then at the last minute, perhaps Thailand will come, and Indonesia, who have 200 million Muslims and etc., would come with bigger money, and then they would disappoint you, and so the planes don't come, and then people are stranded. So normally, it is mainly as a result of the failure of the Hajj Board to secure planes, and that is also because they are disappointed at the last minute because perhaps other countries have come to these airlines with higher bids and so on and so forth.
Could it not be because also some private individuals who sort of make themselves Hajj contractors also look to make a quick buck in the process?
I'm not so sure that that is the case, because all these Hajj agents, when they collect their money, they pay to the Hajj Board. The Hajj Board is the central collecting.
So who appoints the Hajj Board?
The Hajj Board is appointed by government.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
And so these are senior Muslims?
Muslims, clerics.
And respected?
Yeah.
So the current chairman of the Hajj Board is it A.R. Gomda?
IC
Say IC I'm told he's one of the most respected African Muslims in terms of his scholastic background or something. He's highly respected, and when he prays in a very different way. Who is he? Why is he so different? What is his standing or ranking?
Well, as I told you, for scholars, we believe that every viewpoint is a valid viewpoint. And so, I mean, I'm a young man, so by the time I grew up and got conscious, he was already IC. And so, and of course, he's very famous in the World Muslim League, or World Assembly of Muslim League, something. There's an organization that is run by Saudi Arabia that brings together eminent Muslims around the world to discuss matters of the welfare of Muslims in the world. And he's a member of it. Quite frankly, it's a prestigious club. So if he says that, I mean, he's respected in the international. And of course, if you go to World Assembly of Muslim League meeting in Saudi, you are not a small boy. You will meet people from all over the world. And so to that extent, you are an oboro.
So as we speak, as the Minister for Zongo Development and Inner Cities,
yes,
do you have oversight over the activities of the Hajj Board, or that's separate?
No, Hajj Board is completely
separate,
independent and answerable directly to the office of the President.
So, but as far as you know, how well is this year's Hajj been organized?
Well, to the extent that we haven't heard the usual, if you want, lamentations in the public place, I would assume that everything went smoothly, because quite frankly, I haven't heard of any complaints or stranded pilgrims and so on and so on.
Could it be
I would
because
assume
now
that
we have more airports that you can take off to? Because I was told the previous government wanted to make a Tamale an international airport so that the Muslims in Tamale didn't have to come to Accra. Do you know if there are direct flights from Tamale or Kumasi
of course. Meanwhile, that's not a new phenomenon.
Is it?
Even in the PNP era, under President Liman, flights left from Tamale to Makkah. It just got truncated in the military period of the PNDC all the way to the democratic era. And then under President Mahama, it got revived again. It is no new phenomenon at all.
Interesting.
At all.
Now, the other question about, again, the secularism, we've discussed the cathedral for many, many weeks. But I just want your comment now that I have you here. A lot of people struggle with the role the president is playing in it. They think that it's not necessary, that he should just leave the Christian leaders to organize it themselves. As we speak, last week, the demolition started. The site has been secured. What is he trying to do?
Well, first of all, I don't know what he's trying to do. What I know,
no, because you're a former information minister.
It makes me get into his mind. I don't have, what does Shakespeare say? He says there's no art to find a mind's construction in the face.
But if there's anybody who can, you should.
First of all, what I do know is that the president is a very passionate Christian, quite frankly. He is. And I don't think that he makes any apologies about it. It's just that he's not the type of Christian who wears his Christianity on his sleeves. He doesn't. However, at the same time, he believes that monuments of God in our national life is important. I mean, of course, MBT has said that the African is notoriously religious. So you cannot fault an African president for being notoriously religious. And I use notoriously deliberately. No, deliberately. Okay. Because, of course, you guys have made the cathedral a notorious matter.
You mean the media?
So the media people.
It's not a media creation.
It is. Because, listen, if you travel around the world, secular nations, why? There's no nation, in my view, I mean, arguably, one of the most secular nations in the world is France. Okay? They have a cathedral. Côte d'Ivoire is a secular nation. Morocco is a secular nation. When you go to Morocco, they have built a mosque that can accommodate 225,000 worshippers. It took them 6 years, 10,000 workmen.
One building.
One building.
225,000
people can occupy the space. In Casablanca, I went to see it about a month or so ago when I went to talk about a matter that we'll talk about as part of the achievements of the ministry. I follow me.
Wow.
And so people do these things. These things are symbols of national unity. They are things that people coalesce around, especially in a country like ours, which is sharply divided on so many things: ethnicity, politics, etc., etc. Christianity, there's a verse in the Bible. I saw a letter, and I was touched by that letter that the Catholic Bishops' Conference has issued criticizing Emmanuel Bedukobi. And they quoted a verse, which is poignant, that says that when the body of Christ meets, Greek, Jew, this, there
is neither Jew nor Greek. It's
exactly.
In Galatians.
Is dissolved. And then we are all one in the body of Christ. A nation like Ghana would need a symbol like that allows us to come together. It's unfortunate, you will argue, and cleverly so, if you do, that, okay, so why did the cathedral become a symbol of division rather than unity? But of course, that was not President Akufo-Addo's intention. His intention was that the Christian fraternity should have a symbol around which...
So did he get buy-in from the major stakeholders? For example, because if you want it to be something national, some will even say, for example, the opposition party should be consulted because you want this to unify. But it appears not just the cathedral, but a lot of his policies are decidedly his, and they are...
Well, do you know...
manifestly MPP policies, if you follow.
You see, the politics that we practice, this so-called multi-party democracy, is inherently adversarial. Quite frankly, it is inherently... And this adversarial nature of partisan politics is not just Ghanaian. in the UK, in Democrat versus Republican, and this, that, there's an adversarial element to the politics that we practice. And this same arrangement, political arrangement, says that any party seeking political power puts up its manifesto, puts up its own arrangements, and once people vote for it, after all, you don't consult an opposing party to write your manifesto.
But you see, the difference, the difference is that in the UK, for example, there's a continuity that the Queen represents. So even though Theresa May hands over to Boris Johnson, the Queen represents a certain continuity of state. But we don't have that. Yeah. That's why I was able to choose his cabinet in less than 3 days. I mean, the Nigerians voted in February. They've still not sworn in their new ministers, and it's August.
I heard you make that point on your Super Morning show.
And explain that. They voted in February. Okay. Buhari was sworn in May. He named his cabinet ministers end of July. Mm-hmm. He hasn't even given the portfolios yet. Mm-hmm. And the argument is that, well, there's the process of even handing over to the same government from election to swearing in to appointment of ministers is taking over 6 months. The UK did it in 3 days. Now, how are you going to compete with that? So I'm pointing this out to you because of what you said about Ghana, UK. They have a continuity. The civil service is very professional. Yes. The Queen represents continuity of state. Here, when a party changes government, everybody is changing.
But it's precisely the point you are making, precisely the reason why we should have monuments, because we don't have a monument like a queen. And it's precisely the reason why we should have other monuments like a national mosque, like a national cathedral.
Yeah, but that's why but there's also precisely the reason why the president should seek the buy-in of important stakeholders.
Yes.
Free SHS, 1D, 1F, new ministries created, national cathedral. A lot of these things may be good ideas, but we know from history that if the MPP leaves office, even if not even the MPP, even Akufo-Addo, another MPP may not even continue because he probably did not get the buy-in of these other stakeholders. Therefore, it becomes decidedly his idea.
Well, fortunately, in the case of the National Cathedral, which is the subject that we are discussing right now, it's not state money. It is the Christian community that is raising funds. What the state has done is the state is basically a facilitator, has given them land. But the money comes from the public. I mean, Christians. Even me, if I decided, I haven't contributed, but if I decided to contribute, I would be free to contribute. Are you following me? And so, in that sense, I don't think that there is any government that would come in the future that would truncate it. No,
okay, but I'm asking as a more general question that, do you not suppose that because of the new things President Akufo-Addo wants to do, and this is not just National Cathedral, some of his policies are very different. Free SHS is very radical, okay? I mean, even one district, one factory is a very radical policy. Creating your ministry is a radical policy. Yeah. So as not to suffer from this 4 years changes, he ought to consult more broader. Seek the buy-in of more.
I understand
people.
All this business of consultation. In that sense, then we would have to go back, like Archbishop Duncan Williams said, and reconfigure our political arrangements. You remember I told you that this is the nature of partisan multi-party arrangements. If we want to carve out a unique African system of politics that allows us to be consultative and communal, built on our traditional African systems, then let's do that. Then it will eliminate this adversarial.
You are saying that he can't, as president, because once you become president, you become state, not party.
I understand.
So he can use that leverage to unify.
You see, it is the manifesto of your party. That's why I say it's the fundamental arrangements that we have. It is your party's manifesto that gives you legitimacy that legitimizes your statehood. So you go with your different manifestos, and then the people vote for one manifesto. And then by the vote, it is implicitly assumed that the Ghanaian people have given the go-ahead.
So you are governing by manifesto. But I agree with manifesto.
To run their manifesto.
But you see, there's chapter 6 of the Constitution, the directive principles of state policy, generally tell you the aspirations. So the manifesto is more like the how of the what. So the manifesto shouldn't be the defining document for governing.
No, the directive principles of state policy basically intends to, if you want, ensure that a certain president who has all sorts of biases, whether they are ethnic or religious or whatever biases, does not use state machinery as a way of emasculating certain sections and isolating, or if you want, eliminating certain sections of the society from our developmental process. You read the
it's also very aspirational. It's also
to say that, every government must be careful to govern in this manner, in a way that makes for inclusion.
But that's the point.
That's all.
So, but if you are bringing policies that are only popular within your party, you get me?
That's not true.
It's going to cause a problem, because if, for example, if a new MPP government can come and say, I don't need a ministry for Zongo development, or I don't even want free SHS anymore, and that will be tragic, because then the gains you've made by putting all these people to school, because you didn't do the consultative work, is one step forward, one step backwards.
Do you remember that since 2008, when President Akufo-Addo started talking about free SHS, the other side was very adamant that, one, it is not ripe for us to do it, that it is not ideal, and that they would not do it. So people who, when you believe, you have a conviction that in a generation, we can get every Ghanaian to have at least a senior high school education. That is your conviction. And you have seen that all over the world. Any nation that we call a first world nation today is because it has wiped out illiteracy. That is stated fact. So if that is stated fact, and you agree that this is the way to go, and the people that you are allegedly supposed to consult are telling you that they would not agree to that if they won an election. Really?
Okay. We'll leave it there. When we come back, we'll find out more about what he's achieved in this role as Minister for Inner Cities and Zongo Development. This is the point of view, is the Barka da Sallah edition. Don't go away. This is the point of view, and we're really commemorating Eid AlAdha, relaxing with the Minister for Inner Cities and Zongo Development. He's wearing two hats. He's an he's a religion scholar. He teaches religions at the UCC, and he's taken us through some history. We've also spoken about some ideas around secularism and manifesting your religion. Now we want to talk about the ministry he runs or heads. What have they achieved so far, and how satisfied is he that on the basis of the work they've done, people in the Zongo communities in particular would be happy with this work? I'm giving this premise because during Ramadan, an NPP MP in the Agogo area went to give, food for the iftar to the community, and they said, no, we don't want your food. You haven't fixed our roads. You haven't done what you wanted to do. Don't try and trick us with food for breaking our fast. We don't need your food. So that was very stark. And when you put that story out, your picture comes in, because then you are the Minister for Zongo Development and the Zongo community. So what was the basis for creating this ministry as you understand it?
Well, of course, the basis for creating it is the same directive straight principles of state policy thing that you and I spoke about before the break. That virtually, if you want, mandates presidents to develop inclusive policies. And so this is a deliberate policy of inclusion, to include, if you want, communities in our country that for a very long time have been on the periphery of the development agenda. In other words, those communities lack basic social amenities, that poverty is rife, that social services are on the low in these communities, and etc., etc. Are you following me?
Yes.
So this one says, okay, let's create a vehicle that will specifically address this matter. Because for over 60 years after independence, they have not found, if you want, the kind of paradigm that they want based on the arrangements that we have been following all these. So let's change another arrangement. And so the president thought, okay, the arrangement to do is a targeted arrangement that devotes money, specifically for intervening in these communities.
So it means the Ministry for Local Government was not far-reaching enough, or inner cities and Zongos are unique and so many that it merits the attention of a full ministry. This is what he's saying.
Yeah, because what I'm saying is that, you see, if you have a budget for the Ministry of Local Government to take care of all local government areas, are you following me?
Yes.
It is going to, if you want, divide that money into bits and pieces for every, and sometimes then it becomes a drop in an ocean in respect to certain communities. Are you following me? Especially if those communities are not economically empowered themselves to be able to add on to what is happening. So what this does is that outside the local government arrangement to put a fund in that specifically intervenes in these communities to be able to bring up the level of development.
So,
and I agree with you also about the numbers. It's huge because Zongo communities alone are 1,080 in this country.
1,080 Zongo
communities, yes.
Wow. I was born in Medina.
Yes.
I know Medina Zongo very well.
Yes.
So you're saying communities like Medina Zongo.
Medina, there are 1,080
1,080
of them, Bernard.
In the whole country?
In the whole country.
Serious?
Seriously.
Which is the largest Zongo in Ghana?
Oda.
Oda. Oh, it's not even the Kumasi one?
No. It's Oda. And Eastern region has the highest number of Zongo communities. I don't know how many. I mean, in their hundreds.
How do we define a Zongo community? Because you've separated that from inner cities.
Yes. I'll come to the inner city bit.
Yes.
First of all, the simple explanation that I give in the public place is that all Zongo communities are inner cities, but not all inner cities are Zongos.
Okay.
That's
okay.
all.
Okay.
So
okay.
The ministry could simply have been called Ministry of Inner City Development.
Okay.
Are you following
I get it.
me?
Yeah.
But it is because Zongo communities have certain unique characteristics. And if you look at the Zongo Development Fund law, it names these characteristics as one, that the majority of the inhabitants of that community are Muslim. That's one. Number two, that the lingua franca that binds that community is Hausa.
Wow.
Are you following me? These are two distinguishing characteristics from other inner cities like Apeusika in Cape Coast or Amamoma in Cape Coast or
so will Ashaiman qualify as an inner city?
It is an inner city without a doubt.
But not necessarily a Zongo.
Yes, but there's also Ashaiman Zongo.
Interesting. Within Ashaiman
Yes.
itself.
In fact, actually, there are towns, whole towns that are Zongo. For example, Salaga.
The whole town is a Zongo?
It's a Zongo. Salaga is a Zongo.
The whole town?
The whole town is Zongo. So, there are those.
But that's a large town.
Yes, but the whole town.
But they don't have the same needs as Medina Zongo or Ashaiman Zongo, because there's Medina Zongo will be smaller with deeper problems. Salaga is a huge town with more amenities.
Exactly. But it is a Zongo. That's the point.
Wow.
I'm just trying to give you the different types of Zongo that we have. There are some that are whole towns and some that are communities within.
So what kind of social and economic challenges would a Zongo have that other parts of the country would not have?
Well, of course, the obvious one being the lack of social amenities like schools, like hospitals. Are you following me?
Is it because of the way they developed? For which reason how come a lot of these places don't have these? Is it that they were formed by people who were migrating? Is it because they were poor people? Is it what is the history behind the Zongo that makes it uniquely so deprived?
Yeah, it's because of the nature of it, as you said. The word Zongo actually is a corruption of Zango. The former minister, the Honorable Boniface Abubakar, used to insist that he would call it Zango rather than Zongo.
That's the pure name.
But that's the pure name.
I see.
Which means a temporal place of abode. Okay. And these are places that in the 13th, 14th centuries, people of Sahelian and northern Nigerian origins who came to the Gold Coast to trade.
Oh, okay.
To do cola trading, salt, etc., in exchange for cattle which they brought, and etc., dwelt.
Okay.
There are dwelling places in these major towns where they would go and anchor, if you want, anchor their cows and so on and so forth, and etc. And then they called it Zango because, of course, in their view, they were brought here just for the trading purposes, and that after some time they would go. The other wave of Sahelian and northern Nigerian migration was a deliberate policy by the British colonial government to bring in soldiers from northern Nigeria.
To come and help them fight us.
Yes. Well, yes. They formed what they call the Royal West African Frontier Force.
Because they were very good horsemen. So they needed them.
Exactly.
So if you go to Kano, some of the best horse riders are there. You bring them to come and do.
And the Gold Coast Constabulary Force, all of these people were soldiers. That is why today, what they call the Southern Command, the headquarters of the Southern Command, their motto is still Hausa today.
Because they came to train people in even...
Exactly. You know, if you go there, they've
it.
written something that I'm sure many Ghanaians just pass and read, they don't understand. They say Kulum Shiri, which means always ready.
So that's a bit of history there.
So in Elmina, in Denu, along the coast, they settled these Hausa soldiers from northern Nigeria. And then from their quarters, these Zongos sprang up all over the country, in addition to what I said, the waves of migration. And then also, if you go to the Ashanti Empire, you know, the deliberate policy of the past Asante king, Nana Osei Kwame and the rest of them, to bring in Muslim clerics to serve as amulet makers. And who, they were making Muslim charms for the British Army. You
really?
know, yeah. So,
wow.
All of the things that you see on these, they are Quranic writings, they are talismans. That's what the Asantis call Asuman.
Interesting.
It's all Quranic writing. And they were scribes. And they served as secretaries to the Ashanti kings and so on and so forth. And then they give them settlements around the place. That's why the immediate vicinity, the first neighbors of the Messiah, is the Zongo people.
So that's great history. With 1,080 communities, you have less than 2.5 years in this role you were given. What is your realistic target? What are you trying to do?
You see, people ask me, and then I say to people that in line with the president's vision, my concern is about the human development, the human beings in these places. And I always tell people that if by the end of next year, I'm walking out of the ministry and there are 3,000, at least 3,000 inhabitants of Zongo communities around the country who will say that because of this man, my life got transformed, my incomes got improved, I got to get an education, I'll feel fulfilled. And so that is why we are rolling out all these Zongo cuisine promotion program, skills development programs in ICT, in leather making, because we want to empower the young people in these places to have skills, employable skills, you know, so they can engage productively with the society. Because all this thing about Zongo communities are habitations for violent people and etc. is because, as the saying goes, the devil finds work for idle hands.
So there's unemployment in those communities.
Those areas. So you want to empower them. People talk about the Zongo boys are very brilliant, but they use their brilliance for Sakawa. So our training program, what we call the Zongo Coders program, is supposed to reorient their
from
minds
Sakawa to coding for profit.
Coding for profit and etc. So we are doing all of this, and the Zongo Cuisine Promotion Program, I'm sure you love Wache. I am always at Auntie Muni's place. Wache is a Zongo cuisine, Sobolo is a Zongo cuisine, Lamujin is a Zongo cuisine. There are others like Tubani, there are others like Wasa Wasa that you may not know, and etc. So all of these things, our agenda is to put them on the national cuisine. And the way that we can put them on the national cuisine is to give proper training to the women who make these foods. So in giving them that training and getting them to cook these foods in more hygienic environments, adopt better accounting processes for keeping their money, and also supporting them with some money. You know, by the way, we are in talks with Maslock. Maslock has agreed. Now, so far, we've done about 500. We've trained 500 women in all this proper bookkeeping, branding, etc.
How can you assure us that you are not doing this on a partisan basis, that this is open to all? Because people don't trust politicians. And once you start doing interventions in the community, they see it as, because a lot of people feel, oh, the Maslock is only MP people who are getting. How do you convince us that this is being done genuinely for people who need it and not for those who will vote for your party?
Well, in our case, we don't go to party people as a give us a list. You know, we consult with the leaders of the community. And then also we have a second layer of sending anonymous personnel into the communities to be able to see who is cooking solo bolo where, who is doing wache where, etc., so that you know that these are genuine women. And we don't go and we ask you, hey, you doing what, you're preparing kose for sale, where's your party ID card?
Sure?
Frankly, we don't. No,
I see.
Don't.
So by the time we are in 2020 December, you have at least 3,000 households. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
I'm saying benefited
3,000 human beings,
individuals.
Yes, collectively. I mean, whether they are in the Coders program or shoemaking program, whatever program. I'm saying that the target, that's not the overall target of the ministry. I say, me personally, what will make me satisfied that I came to contribute my quota to nation development is if I can get 10,000 human beings across all the professions, whether it is in ICT or whatever.
And are these programs open to the inner cities too?
They are open to the inner cities too. You see, there is the Zongo Development Fund, okay, which is the only single agency under the ministry, okay, whose money is meant only for intervening in Zongo communities. But the ministry also has a budget which it is allowed to use to intervene.
Because the question is, aren't you discriminating? Because you admit that the social problems in Zongos are also in inner cities.
Yes.
The only thing is that the Zongos speak Hausa and they are predominantly Muslim.
Yes.
So if I'm in an inner city and I'm not Muslim, do I benefit?
You do. Actually, if you go to the Zongo Development Fund board, there are other people on the board, for example. There are even Christian clerics
on the Zongo Development
Fund board, because we recognize that in the Zongo communities there are minority Christian communities, some up to 5%, 2%, 3%, whatever it is, but they do exist. And then in the inner cities, for example, recently we were in the Choko area, you know, to do 52 household toilets for households that didn't have toilets because, you know, of the open defecation thing that takes place by the sea. We want to be able to curb that thing. So we're helping with Ghana's tourism development by trying to prevent. We are rolling out phase 2.
Do you also have a political mandate where traditionally your party has not done very well in Zongo? So is there some secret memo that in doing all of this, we are expecting, because the NDC seems to trounce you pretty well in Zongo communities, and this has been for the past 20 years.
Yes.
Is that part of the mandate?
Well, if that comes as a bonus, well and good. But we are serving the country principally. But of course, you know, for those of us who teach ethics, there are the things that are called unintended consequences. So, of course, you know that there are direct consequences and there are indirect consequences of anything that you do. The direct consequence is that we want to bring development to these communities. The indirect consequence is that it may, and even that is not a guarantee, it may inure to the political profit of the NPP.
But would that be ethical as a Muslim, where you are trying to almost bribe people to vote for you based on the economic benefit you bring to them?
No, but that's why I said it's unintended consequence.
It's not your direct...
No, it's not.
You don't intend them to vote for you?
No.
You sure?
You remember Bob Marley's song, I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot the deputy.
The deputy was an unintended consequence.
You see, if you decide, for example, it's a very bad example, but I'll give it anyway. If you decide that you want to assassinate a president of any nation, and you are going to go to an independence celebration of that nation and throw a bomb, there is no way you are going to get to kill the president only. There will be people who will die along the president, but those are not your targets. They are just...
That's a very bad example.
Exactly. But I said I was going to give it, because that's what will make the example
everybody's going to parliament. Are you going to parliament?
No, I've never been interested in parliament, never had an ambition.
Never?
I pray that God doesn't even...
Why? You don't want to be a legislator?
No, I don't.
You just want to serve in the position you are given?
Yeah. Finish.
Wow. I hope we talk again before the election. Then you can share with me stories of the 3,000 or more. Of the
of more. Because, in fact, actually, because this one is not like my Islamic studies that is all in my head. You know, I brought this paper along. You saw I never opened it. These are a list of validated projects that are about to commence in Zongo communities across the country.
Wow.
All over the country. And
can I
quickly, let me just do it. I can give it
to
you. We have Old Tafu Zongo, Asim, Techimai, Nkoko Zongo. Nkoko, there's a Zongo called Nkoko Fulani Zongo. There is Hohoi Zongo, Pando Zongo, Edwejiri, Konongu Zongo, Odumasi Zongo, Kintampo, Efiekuma, Agogo, Abofo Zongo, Kokoti Zongo.
These are separate projects for separate Zongos.
For separate Zongos. So we are intervening in all of the. Some are water projects.
Have you gone to all the 1,080?
No,
you can't go.
That's a difficult one. Yeah, but for all of those that are here, we went there, we met with the community elders. They told us that these are the projects that are dear to their hearts. We don't just intervene based on our own whims and caprices. We go, we sit with the community leaders. They tell us this is our most pressing, it is water, and then we intervene in water. It is our school block, and we intervene. So they are all here. Second D, Bodi, Mansua Menfi Zongo, Joaboso Zongo, Akontombra, Jema, Darussalam number 2 Zongo, Englishi, Asim, etc., etc. So it's quite a huge number. So the point I want to make to people who are watching us is that we will get there. 1,080 is a lot. Fortunately for me, at the last Eid celebrations at the Independence Square, the president pleaded my case for me with the Zongo committee, said 1,080 is a lot. So
They
there's
should
a lot
relax
of
for
pressure on the minister. You heard him. He says, so please have patience for him. So I would add on to that and say that they should have patience for me, but I am determined to do it, inshallah.
I wish you well.
Thank
and
you,
happy Salah. As you say, the blessings of the season be on you and all of us. Thank you very much for such a great conversation. I'm hoping we can do some next time for Eid al-Fitr as well. So my name is Ben Avle. Thank you very much for watching today's edition of The Point of View. As you can see, I'm fully dressed for Eid. He's not, but that's a different issue. Stay with CTTV. We have more programs for you. Goodbye.